Insomnia is usually a curse when you are 78 years old, a relentless reminder that your body is tired but your mind refuses to quit. But tonight, at 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday, insomnia wasn't a curse. It was my salvation. I stood in the shadowed hallway of the house I bought, the house I paid for with 40 years of designing skylines, listening to the silence. I am Samuel Joyce. I am a retired architect, a man who understands structure, foundation, and load-bearing walls. But living in the guest wing of my daughter's home for the past 3 months, I had begun to realize that the foundations of this family were rotting from the inside out. My throat was dry, scratching like sandpaper. I shuffled toward the kitchen, my felt slippers making a soft, rhythmic shh sound on the hardwood floor. I didn't turn on the lights. I knew the layout of this house better than the people who lived in it. I designed the open-concept kitchen. I selected the granite for the island. I paid for the marble tile. The kitchen was dark, save for a single, spectral blue glow emanating from the far end of the island. It was a laptop. Open. Awake. I paused. Chloe, my daughter, was possessive of her devices to the point of paranoia. She locked her phone when she went to the shower. She angled her screen away from me whenever I entered a room. She treated her digital life like a vault. But tonight, exhaustion must have claimed her. A half-empty glass of red wine sat next to the machine, a crimson ring staining the white coaster. I hesitated. I am a man who respects privacy. I raised Chloe to value boundaries. I taught her that a closed door means knock, and a closed journal means don't read. But as I stood there, staring at that unnatural blue light, a cold prickle of unease ran down my spine. For the last 3 months, the air in this house had been suffocating. It wasn't just the tension of living with in-laws. It was something sharper. Chloe had been distant, snapping at me for small infractions, leaving a light on, coughing too loudly during her favorite show. And Mark, her husband, he had been worse. He made jokes about how expensive it was to keep an old man alive. I walked past the laptop, intending to ignore it. Then I stopped. The font on the screen was large, stark against the white background of the email client. My eyes, dimmed by cataracts, but aided by the reading glasses I wear around my neck on a chain, caught a single word in the subject line. Cleanup. It wasn't a work email. Chloe worked in marketing. Cleanup didn't fit. I stepped closer. The house was silent, but my heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My hand trembled as I reached out and touched the trackpad. The screen brightened, flooding the kitchen with cold light. It was an email thread on a secure, encrypted server. The interface was dark, minimalist. The sender wasn't a name. It was a string of random alphanumeric characters. The recipient was Chloe. I read the latest message, time-stamped 3 hours ago. Target, Samuel Joyce. Location, primary residence. Method, accidental fall downstairs. Date, Friday, November 14th. Price, $50,000. The air left the room. It didn't just leave my lungs, it vanished from the entire house. I gripped the cold edge of the granite island to keep my knees from buckling. Friday. That was 3 days away. Friday was the day Chloe had insisted we have a family dinner to celebrate my birthday a week early. I scrolled down, my fingers shaking so badly the cursor jumped. I read Chloe's reply, typed just 2 hours ago. Agreed. The transfer is pending. Make sure it looks like he tripped. He's clumsy. My daughter. The girl I carried on my shoulders at the zoo so she could see the giraffes. The woman whose student loans I paid off by selling my boat. The child I held when she scraped her knee, telling her that Daddy would always fix it. She hadn't just hired a killer. She had scripted my death. She had used my own frailty against me. She had taken the very vulnerability I tried to hide, my shuffling walk, my occasional stumble, and turned it into a weapon. She wasn't planning a murder, she was planning a performance. I stared at her name on the screen, Chloe J. Sent, and I felt a physical tearing in my chest. It wasn't a heart attack, it was the sensation of love being ripped out by the root. I realized in this terrifying, silent kitchen that the monster wasn't under the bed. She was sleeping in the master suite, wrapped in 800 thread count sheets I had bought her for Christmas. If you are listening to this, if you are sitting in a home you paid for, surrounded by people who share your blood, wake up. Don't think loyalty is genetic. Don't make the mistake of thinking you know the people you live with just because you share a last name. Greed doesn't have a face until it's looking at you from a laptop screen at 3 a.m. Subscribe to this channel because I am about to show you what happens when a father decides he isn't ready to die. Creak. The sound came from the hallway, a floorboard, the third one from the landing. I knew that creak. I fixed it 10 years ago, but it always came back. Footsteps, heavy, rhythmic, not Chloe's light tread. Mark. Panic, hot and blinding, flooded my veins. I couldn't be found looking at this. If they knew I knew, Friday wouldn't be the date. Friday would become tonight. They would improvise. A pillow, a slip in the shower, a heart attack induced by terror. I had seconds. I fumbled for my phone in the pocket of my pajama bottoms. It was an old model, a cracked Android, but the camera worked. I swiped up. My thumb slipped on the screen. Come on, come on. I held it over the laptop screen. The flash. Was the flash off? I checked. Yes. Click. I snapped a picture of the screen. I captured the text, the date, the sender ID, and Chloe's reply. The footsteps were at the kitchen threshold. I stepped back from the island. I shoved the phone into my pocket. I grabbed the handle of the refrigerator and pulled it open. Light flooded the room, blinding me momentarily. I grabbed a pitcher of water just as Mark walked into the kitchen. He was wearing boxers and a faded gray t-shirt. His hair was messy, his eyes bleary with sleep. He stopped dead when he saw me. He didn't look confused, he looked alert, instantly alert. His eyes darted to the laptop on the island. The screen was still glowing blue. Then his eyes snapped to me. His gaze wasn't the look of a son-in-law finding an elderly relative getting a midnight snack. It was sharp, predatory, assessing. "You?" he asked. His voice was tight, missing the fake warmth he usually plastered over it. My heart was beating so hard I thought he could see it thumping against my thin pajama shirt. I gripped the pitcher of cold water. It was heavy. It could be a weapon. "Thirsty?" I rasped. My voice sounded old, weak, pathetic. It was the best acting of my life. "Just getting water. Throat is dry." I turned to the cabinet and pulled down a glass, my hand shaking visibly. I let it shake. I wanted him to see the tremor. I wanted him to see the clumsy old man he was paying $50,000 to erase. Mark didn't move for a long second. He watched me pour the water. Then he walked to the island. He didn't look at the screen. He casually reached out and flipped the laptop lid closed. The blue light vanished, plunging the kitchen back into semi-darkness. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. He stared at me, searching my face for a sign of recognition, a flicker of guilt. "You should be in bed, Sam," he said softly. "You need your rest. We have a big weekend coming up. Friday dinner." He smiled. It wasn't a smile. It was a baron of teeth. It was the smile of a butcher looking at a steer and deciding where to make the first cut. "Yes," I said, shuffling backward toward the hallway, clutching my water glass like a shield against a sword. "Big weekend." "Good night, Sam." I turned and walked away. I forced myself not to run. I shuffled, catching my toe on the rug, stumbling slightly. I heard him exhale behind me. He bought it. He thought I was just a senile old fool wandering the house. I reached my room. I closed the door. I locked it. Then I wedged the heavy armchair under the handle. I sat in the dark, my back against the wall, staring at the glowing rectangle of my phone. I looked at the photo. I looked at the price tag on my life. The house was silent again, but now the silence wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a hunting ground. I didn't drink the water. I just sat there, waiting for the sun to rise, knowing that the people sleeping down the hall were dreaming of my funeral. Sleep is for the innocent, and last night I lost my innocence forever. I lay in bed, fully dressed under the covers, my shoes still on my feet, listening to the house wake up around me. The sounds that used to signify the start of a family day, the groan of the pipes as the shower turned on, the aggressive whir of the expensive coffee grinder, the heavy tread of Mark's feet on the stairs, now sounded like the mechanics of a trap being set. But the worst sound was Chloe's laughter. It drifted down the hallway, light and airy, a sound that used to make me smile because it reminded me of the little girl who loved cartoons. Now it sounded like the sharpening of a knife. She was laughing over breakfast with her husband, discussing their day, while a transfer for $25,000 sat pending in a dark corner of the internet, earmarked for my execution. I waited until 7 a.m. I checked my face in the mirror. The fear was there, etched into the lines around my eyes, but I pushed it down. I had to be the oblivious victim. I had to be the stumbling, inconvenient old man they were counting on. I walked into the kitchen. The smell of bacon grease and dark roast coffee hit me, nauseatingly normal. "Morning, Dad," Chloe chirped. She was standing at the stove, flipping pancakes. She turned and kissed my cheek. Her lips felt like ice against my skin, a Judas kiss that burned long after she pulled away. "Like a log," I lied, my voice cracking just the right amount. "Didn't hear a thing." Mark looked up from his tablet. He was wearing his running gear, looking healthy and vibrant, the picture of a man with a long life ahead of him. "Head out? Where to, Sam?" "I'm out of my blood pressure medication," I said, patting my pockets as if searching for a forgotten list. "Going to run to the pharmacy down on 4th. And then, well, I might grab a coffee with an old friend." Chloe asked quickly, too quickly. Her eyes darted to Mark, then back to me. "You know, with your balance issues." The irony was so sharp it almost cut my tongue. She didn't want me falling on the sidewalk for free when she was paying good money for me to fall down the stairs on Friday. "I'm fine," I said, grabbing my keys from the hook. "It's a beautiful day. The doctor said I need the walk." I walked out the front door before they could object further. I felt their eyes on my back, burning holes in my jacket, calculating the risk of me wandering off script. I didn't go to the pharmacy. I walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, my heart rate spiking every time a car slowed down near me. I rode 4 miles across town, surrounded by strangers, feeling safer with them than I did in my own home. It was a place that smelled of 30 years of bacon grease and stale smoke, a relic of a city that was disappearing. The vinyl booths were cracked, the coffee was strong enough to strip paint, and it was a place Chloe would never be caught dead in. I sat in the back booth. I waited. 10 minutes later, the bell above the door jingled. Detective Frank Miller, retired. He looked like a man made of leather and gristle, wearing a trench coat that had seen better decades, and a fedora that wasn't a fashion statement, but a habit. We had served in Vietnam together. He had pulled me out of a rice paddy in 1968 when a sniper pinned us down. He was the only man on earth I would trust with my life, because he had already saved it once. He scanned the room, his eyes sharp and assessing, missing nothing. He saw me and nodded. He sat down opposite me without a word. The waitress, a woman named Barb, who had been working here since the Nixon administration, poured him a black coffee before he even asked. Frank looked at my face. He studied the tremor in my hands, the pallor of my skin, The terror I couldn't hide no matter how hard I tried. "You look like hell, Sam," Frank said. His voice sounded like gravel crunching under tires. "I'm a mark, Frank," I whispered. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it and slid it across the sticky table. I pulled up the photo of the email I had taken in the dark kitchen. Frank put on a pair of cheap reading glasses. He stared at the small screen. He didn't blink. He didn't gasp. He just went very, very still. It was the stillness of a predator scenting blood. "Friday," he said. "She's paying $50,000, I said, my voice cracking, the shame of it washing over me. $50,000 to push me down the stairs. That's what I'm worth to her." Frank scrolled the image, zooming in on the sender ID with his thick, calloused fingers. I recognized this syntax, the encryption routing. This isn't a professional hitman, Sam. This is a broker, a middleman on the dark web. They take the contract, skim a fee, and hire local thugs to do the dirty work. It's messy, it's brutal. He looked up at me, his eyes hard. "Where did she get 50 grand? "I don't know," I said, shaking my head. "Maybe a loan?" "Give me your banking app," Frank ordered. I handed him the phone. Frank navigated to my savings account, the nest egg I had built over 40 years of designing skylines, the money meant to ensure I never became a burden. He tapped the screen, his face grim. "Here," he said, turning the phone back to me. I looked. A transfer had been initiated yesterday, $25,000, pending. The realization hit me harder than the email had. It punched the air out of my lungs. "She's paying for my murder with my own money," I whispered. "She transferred the down payment from my account." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and angry. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a cold, hard fury that solidified in my gut like concrete setting in a foundation. They weren't just killing me. They were making me finance the weapon. "Frank," I asked, looking at Frank, "do we go to the police? We have the email." "Not yet," Frank said, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "This email is circumstantial. It's a photo of a screen. She'll claim it's spam or a prank or that her account was hacked. The transfer isn't complete. It's pending. If we go to the cops now, they'll bring her in for questioning. She'll lawyer up. She'll cry. She'll play the worried daughter." He paused, taking a sip of the scalding coffee. "And then, Sam, then she knows you know, and she won't wait for Friday. She'll use a pillow tonight while you're sleeping." "So I'm dead either way," I said, staring at my hands. "No," Frank said. A dangerous light entered his eyes, the same look he had in the jungle 50 years ago when he decided we weren't going to die in the mud. "We have the date, Friday. We have the location, your house. We know the method." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black device. It looked like a flash drive, innocuous and dull. "You're going to go back there," Frank said. "You're going to be the clumsy, tired old man. You're going to complain about your knees. You're going to ask Chloe for extra pillows." He slid the device across the table. It spun and stopped in front of me. "This is a keystroke logger and an audio bug," he explained. "You need to plug this into the back of her laptop. It will install in 10 seconds. It will give us the broker's reply. It will give us the exact time the cleaner is arriving." I looked at him, confused. "No," Frank said, picking up his coffee cup and draining it. "We're going to welcome him. And when he arrives on Friday to push you down those stairs, we're going to be waiting." I picked up the device. It felt heavy in my hand. It felt like a weapon. "I'm terrified, Frank," I admitted. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you sharp. Go home, Sam. Kiss your daughter. Eat her food." I walked out of the diner and into the bright morning sun. The world looked the same. The traffic, the birds, the people rushing to work. But it wasn't. I wasn't Samuel the architect anymore. I wasn't a father. I was the bait.